welcome everyone, whether you're here or on YouTube, watching the recording or live.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. So yeah, I am Misty Wilson, Head of Education and Customer Support for Immerse, and I'm joined with my two colleagues. So a little bit on my background. Before joining Immerse about a year ago, I spent the majority of my career in higher ed, teaching English language learners and then directing a large ESL program. And then after that, I also worked with IELTS in assessment. And so I'm excited to talk about Immerse and what we know about virtual reality and the affordances that it provides. So I'll turn it over to Trisha to introduce herself.
Hi, y'all. My name is Trisha Thrasher. I am the research manager at Immerse. So I oversee all of our kind of like internal research that we do, but we also work with university research partners to examine the efficacy of our platform. So I oversee that work as well. Before coming to Immerse, I was getting my doctorate degree at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and during that period, as well during my MA, I was teaching French as a second language, or French as a foreign language in the US. And then also I taught EFL for a year as well while living in France. And I did a bunch of research on not necessarily Immerse, but virtual reality for language learning, virtual worlds for language learning. So I'm excited to talk about some of the research we've done today. And I'll turn it over to Christina.
Thanks, Trisha. Christina Cabbage. I'm the Curriculum and Assessment Manager at Immerse. And prior to joining Immerse, I spent about 32 years in higher education in the field of English as a second language. So I may know some of you have been very highly involved in TESOL, the call interest section, but also the material writers interest section. And that's really what brought me to Immerse, because a large part of my role is designing all our lessons on our platform. So I get to write all the content. So I'll hand it back to Misty. I think she's going to get us started here.
Christina. So we were interested in what experiences our audience has had with VR. Whether any of you, first of all, have tried virtual reality headsets. So do we have anyone in the crowd, and you can either just chat or come on camera and show a hand? Has anyone actually used a VR headset before yet? So I saw Nan, I think you were shaking your head no. See if I get any responses in our chat. Dex or Rebecca, and I think Nellie, you have before. So what we are going to look at is ways that virtual reality can be used to really do a lot of things that we can't do inside of a classroom. So it's a really exciting field, and I'm guessing then that those who are in our audience, at least in the Zoom meeting right now, have not yet taught VR and incorporated that to their class today. So I'll be excited to hear by the end of this what your thoughts are on it. But we also wanted to know from those in the audience what you hope to take away from today's session. So if you wouldn't mind just adding to the chat, or even feel free to come off camera and let us know what you hope to take away from the session. And Dex, I see you're on camera now, so welcome. So great. So I see in the chat now. Great. Sorry, I wasn't seeing these little chats, but it looks like, yes, Dex has the Oculus Quest 2. Amazing. And Dex, have you used VR in your classes, your Oculus Quest 2 with students? I'm assuming you've used Second Life. And then I see Dr. Nelly's taught VR and AR with medicine science programs. Great. Okay, so we'll continue on, but feel free to add into the chat anything that you're hoping to take away from this session. We'd like to follow up at the end and see if you were able to get what you thought you would get out of the session. So what we hope to do today is to go over some of the research on the efficacy of virtual reality, define virtual reality, because it has a lot of definitions, and the term itself can be used in a lot of different ways. And then we're going to do an overview of Immerse and show how we have started from what we know about what English language learners need, right? And we started from there, and then we matched it with what can we do in virtual reality that we might not even be able to do in a classroom, and how we've created our program at Immerse. And then I'll demo a little bit and show you some of the features that we've added, and we'll have time for questions and answers. So now I'll turn it over to Trisha, who's going to start us off by first defining virtual reality and then sharing some of the research.
Awesome. Thank you, Misty. So before we jumped into really talking about the research on VR and language learning, we just want to make sure we're all on the same page and understanding what we mean when we say VR in this presentation. There's a lot of different ways that VR has been defined, but if you think of the extended reality continuum, which is commonly cited in the field, you have AR. That's like typically when you view something through like a tablet or a phone. So here you can see, this is an example of Mondley's AR device. And so you can see I was able to kind of superimpose a picture of a dog into my surrounding and then see the word and hear the word in Spanish. So that'd be an example of like augmented reality, right? We're augmenting the real world. Mixed reality is kind of like in between augmented and virtual reality. You do wear a headset of sort, and that's what you can see in the middle here, but you're still able to see the real world around you. Okay, so really the difference is just instead of viewing it from your phone, you're viewing it through the lens of a headset of some sort. So it feels a lot more realistic and immersive. And then the VR, virtual reality, that's what we're referring to in this talk today. And you can see on the right here, yours truly modeling a Meta Quest 2 headset. That's, I would say, I don't want to say the most common, but I would say one of the most common on the market right now, especially in educational settings. And that's where you're completely immersed inside this headset. You're not going to necessarily see the outside world unless you've gone outside of like your guardian boundary, but you're fully immersed in the experience. So Misty, if you want to jump ahead. Thank you. So again, I know many people here have, done a lot of work in Second Life in terms of language learning. Kind of in that realm, we typically refer to experiences that are accessed through a desktop computer as low immersion VR, and those accessed through a headset as high immersion VR. So I just wanted to kind of lay that out. We're going to stay within high immersion VR today. When I talk about previous research studies, in the next few slides, all of those have been conducted with high immersion VR technology. And so VR, our working definition is a computer-generated 360-degree virtual space that can be perceived as being spatially realistic due to the high immersion afforded by a head-mounted device. And again, that's because you're physically inside this headset, so fully immersed in the environment. And why are we talking about VR so much lately? So there has been, Second Life has been around for quite some time. People have been doing work in it for the past 15, 20 years. But in the past 2 years alone, we've seen specifically a rise in VR usage for headsets, so high immersion VR. And this has been due to a lot of different factors, right? So one of them is COVID-19. We all had to adapt and go to online learning. Teachers were looking at ways to how can we make that learning more engaging, more immersive, more realistic, and representative of the real world. That was a big push. Headsets are also becoming much more affordable, and you do have companies such as Meta who are really working to get these headsets out into educational settings. So Immerse, for example, is doing a research project with Meta where they have given us 500 headsets to get into high schools located throughout the US. But Meta also just announced another initiative where they're getting headsets to 15 universities located around the US. So these are becoming more affordable and also just more available through programs like this. It's been estimated that we're going to continue selling 43.5 million headsets per year until 2025, and that the field of education alone will see a 28% growth in VR usage by 2024. So we do expect to keep seeing these technologies implemented into classrooms and settings. So what does the research say? Again, all of this is in the context of high immersion VR, but I want to talk about some of the specific affordances that have been found to benefit language learning. And I'll mention a couple studies that have looked into these affordances. So there's been a few studies on vocabulary learning. And what they found is that when you're actually in these spaces, you're able to pick up an object and interact with it, which is what you're seeing on kind of the right-hand side of the screen here, that high degree of physical interaction and high fidelity and embodied learning can actually lead to better vocabulary acquisition and retention. So there's been two studies that I can think of off the top of my head that haven't looked into this, and both have actually found the exact same thing. So when comparing students on like a desktop computer versus VR, they found that students in VR, high immersion VR, acquired the words better. And this was even more the case when they were able to actually pick up and interact with the object that corresponded to the word that they were learning. So that's one of the ways that vocabulary learning can definitely benefit from these affordances. Listening comprehension, there's also been some work done in that area, and found that because, again, like you're fully immersed, you're really focused on the task at hand, you can't be distracted by pop-ups on your computer or maybe your cell phone, that can lead to greater presence and engagement, which in turn can lead to listening comprehension improvements. There's also been some work that has shown that when students are able to really be immersed in kind of the story or the conversation that they're trying to understand, that all those context clues help situate their learning as well and improve their comprehension on the activity. And then effective factors are a huge thing. So I saw Dex, you actually mentioned something about this in the chat. We know, I mean, it's been established well before outside of high immersion VR with worlds like Second Life, but we know that avatars benefit effective factors like foreign language anxiety. And that's because you do have that layer of anonymity, and also because VR can feel more like a game, so it can feel less serious. And this is huge for language learning because we know that foreign language anxiety is one of the biggest indicators of ultimate success and achievement in a foreign language. So this is a really big thing that we're focused on at Immerse, is how can we make our students more comfortable and more confident using avatars to our advantage. You can go to the next slide. Okay, there's also social interaction. So the fact that you're actually in these spaces together, right? So you can see this again, kind of on the right here. But there's been some studies that have looked at like virtual exchanges and kind of students actually interacting in these environments themselves. I did some work in this area and found that my students were able to have like richer interactions because they were in the space together and because they were able to draw on the environment during their conversation. And then there's also been some work done on pragmatics that has shown that, again, because students are actually virtually in these settings that they perceive to be real, there was a study that essentially put some students in a VR simulation where they're having to have a conversation with some family members over dinner. And then if they gave a response that was considered not appropriate or pragmatically incorrect, the virtual family member would respond accordingly. And so there's been studies that have shown that does actually improve pragmatic learning versus just kind of like role playing in the classroom, because they do feel kind of the weight of their actions in VR. You can go ahead. Let's see. I was just reading Dex's comment in the chat. Yeah, so just as an I'll say that the bulk of high immersion work thus far has been on effective factors, because those are some of the easiest and quickest things to measure. And we do know that VR can lead to increased motivation, increased engagement, lower foreign language anxiety, which in turn turns into like a higher willingness to communicate and take risks in the target language, and increased confidence. The studies that have been done on actual learning gains are extremely promising as well. I will give the caveat that at this point, yes, you can take the reference list for sure. I can send it to you too. The one caveat I'll give is a lot of the studies up until this point have been more small scale, just because access to headsets until the past year and even right now are still kind of difficult to get for large scale studies. But the evidence we have is extremely encouraging. So we've seen studies that lead to better vocabulary learning, better pragmatics, improved listening. We talked about all those, even improved reading skills. It's been one study so far, but they found that students actually had better reading comprehension after reading a story in VR. And again, that kind of goes back to having that context. And then I did some work looking at pronunciation in VR and linking it back to foreign language anxiety. And showing that when students are less anxious, their pronunciation is more target-like. And then there's been a good amount of work looking at speaking skills and kind of overall oral proficiency and how practicing speaking in these environments can improve those for students. So I think it's time. Yeah, I'll turn it over to Christina. She's going to talk about what is Immerse, and then Misty will do a demo for us.
Okay, so we've heard about Immerse. You've seen the research behind it. So what does our platform look like? And I'll actually speak deeper into really the pedagogy now that you have a sense of the research. So how are we marrying the research with what's happening within our platform via the pedagogy? So it is a virtual reality platform. It can be accessed by our learners through the headset, but it can also be accessed through desktop, which is really, really critical because this makes it accessible. We keep hearing today about accessible learning for English language learners across the globe. So having it available on desktop also really checks that bucket as well. It immerses adult language learners into over 35 different authentic environments that mirror real life locations. So when I talk about the pedagogy, we're going to really think about the authentic environments and how those authentic environments become really critical for building that context of language, right? It engages learners by building, fostering, and sustaining that contextualized practice, right? So we know, we as language teachers, many of us have probably taken our students to the cafe or to the bookstore, or, have tried to simulate a doctor's office in a classroom where it becomes very contrived. But here, all our language practice is built in those environments. So it really makes language real. The language comes alive and it contextualizes it for the learners. And this is all done through 4 key pillars. So these key pillars are learn, connect, practice, and play. And so let's unpack each one of these one by one. So the learn part, this is where we have our instructor-led classes, okay? And I just want to go back and say about the 4 pillars. With these 4 pillars, and we know this as language educators, one thing cannot fill that language gap completely, right? So, not only can our students learn in a classroom, we know they need to take that learning outside the classroom, and then they need to take it even outside the campus, perhaps. And then, obviously their assessment is real life. So that's built into the pillars. Now, the first pillar becomes those instructor-led classes. And this is where we have 35 minutes of guide-led, and we're very conscious about using the word guide. These are adult learners, and the guides will guide them through the lesson. So it's very different from a traditional classroom setting. There's 35 minutes of that guide-led class time, and then 10 minutes of peer-led. So let me break this down a little further for you. So in the 35 minutes, learners are going to be exposed to a certain curricular structure, a language structure, be it giving directions or ordering in a restaurant. They're going to work mostly in pairs and small groups with guidance, really targeted guidance on the structures that they need to be successful in that environment. They're going to have a lot of practice time, and then the guide will bring them back and notice the language that they're using and call out the language, both their strengths and their struggles. At the end of that session, members or students have 10 minutes to work together to continue practicing that with the guide completely out of that environment. Because we understand, and as language teachers, we know the value of peer-to-peer learning and what that means for fluency and the development of language skills. The curriculum is aligned to SEFRA, ACTFL, and the global scale of English. It is really thoughtfully scaffolded around this one communicative task, because we want students to walk away from a 35-minute or a 45-minute session feeling like they could accomplish that in the real world. Okay. And, they can come in, register ahead of time, or just jump into a class. So that's our first pillar, learn. Our next pillar is, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you, Misty, the video. Yeah. So before we jump into this video, if you pause that there for a second, I'm just going to set up the situation. And then I know we've had a few more people jump on, which is fabulous. I'd like you in the chat box, if you don't mind, after the video, or even as you notice things in the video, just to type in some of the things you may notice about this language learning experience. But to set it up, this is a lesson on preferences. So members happen to be here in a restaurant. And you can see the guide called out there, Steffi. She has the green guide button. And she's given them a little instruction on preferences and how we express preferences in a restaurant. Now they're going to be directed to practice this in partners. So that's the scenario you're jumping into here. And once again, as you watch this video, it's very short, 2.5 minutes. If you don't mind, just type in that chat box things you may notice about language learning.
New partners. This time, Shotaro is going to work with Tomoki.
Okay.
And Arisa, you're going to work with Chisato. The customer has to sit down like this, here on a table, okay? Any table. And the waiter or the waitress has to stand up and ask, what do you want? What would you like? And stuff. Remember that you have to ask and express preference. It's very important that I hear that, okay? And I am going to give you 3 minutes for this exercise, okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. You can start talking to each other. Please remember, choose who's going to be the waiter and who's going to be the customer right now.
Tomoki-san, can Thank you.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry. Can I be your customer?
Sure. So please have a seat.
Yep, but I don't know how to sit down.
I can see some mark. I can see some mark on the chair.
Yeah, I can see too, but
how about the trigger?
Trigger it. Okay.
Pressing the trigger. Yes. Sorry, I sit.
It's very difficult to adjust. Yes, I can see it.
Okay,
now.
Yeah, I can see you. Okay, welcome to the restaurant.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. We have so many dessert. So we have pudding or cream parfait, fromage. Which one do you like? Do you have any preference?
Yeah. Do you have a strawberry cake?
Oh yes. Yeah, we've just got yesterday.
Oh, yesterday. Recently. That's so nice.
Do you prefer that one?
Okay, so if you don't mind, just take a
New
minute.
partners. This time,
And you can type in there just anything you may have noticed about the lesson. Very effective. Looks real. Okay, something you may have noticed is yes, it less complex, less spontaneous than the courses we've taken in virtual worlds. Okay, yeah, there is a little scripting to these lessons because we do want our members to actually be able to accomplish that task outside of the environment post class. But one thing you may have noticed is a lot of negotiation between the partners. Okay, so our goal is communication here, is using that environment for members or students to be able to communicate. And so clearly the one student was relatively new to using his VR headset and wasn't very skilled maybe at finding how he could sit down. But the other member in English, even though they both share Japanese as their first language, the other member was guiding the new member in English to be able to accomplish that task. And so, and we think that is just the most glorious thing at Immerse, because our goal is to get members to communicate and get them to use the language. And so they were negotiating. We talk about negotiation a lot in English language teaching, right? Because that's a very high skill for students to be able to negotiate with each other. And I just think that was an excellent example of them negotiate. And then once they were able to do that, then they moved on with the task that they needed to complete. So that's just a little clip of one of our lessons there. So now our second pillar here is connect. So as I said earlier, it's not just about what happens within those classroom walls or within this environment, but it's also what are members or students able to do outside that environment. So our second pillar here is connect, and this is where we have conversation groups. It's live conversation practice. It's supported with our guides. However, the focus here is really on the students being able to have a safe and engaging space to practice their language. So we're building that linguistic confidence. It's very authentic, it's very spontaneous, always set around a theme. So, let's say they've taken the class in the restaurant. Now there may be a conversation group where they're in that restaurant. So they're able to, again, really practice some of that language. In Immerse, the Connect sessions, our conversation groups are drop in, drop out. So members can come in and they can leave. They can, there's no set time that they have to begin or set time that they have to leave. So it really gives them a great opportunity to build that confidence that they need. So that was our second pillar. Our third pillar now is practice. So we know, just like in a traditional classroom, going to class is not enough. You need to do some homework, right, outside of class. And so our practice sessions are AI-powered role plays, and they're very interactive. And basically what we're doing is helping to build those communicative skills and even allowing our students to self-assess. So let's say they talked about the restaurant preferences. They may have an AI-powered role play in a restaurant where they have to order with an avatar. So it's a good way for students to self-assess. But what's great about these scenes is that they can be accessed 24/7. So they're not at set times like our classes or our conversation groups, but members or students can go in at any time. They can also practice on their own or with others. So if Trish and I wanted to go in there together and practice, we could do that. Or maybe I just need to build my own confidence and I want to try it alone. I have that option as well. The other great thing, and then Misty will demo this, but you'll be able to see that this can be done through written text or audio. So looking at whatever a student might want to build, whatever language skill they want to build, if they want to build their oral fluency, or they might want to build their writing skills. So that's our practice. Our next one is our play, because of course, we all need a little time to play. And play here includes our learning games. And essentially, these are in a very public space where they can meet and interact with other students, all while building their vocabulary. They have an array of different games that can be played, everything from shooting the arrows to whack-a-mole. And again, Misty will demo some of these as well. But we know in order to be successful or to feel successful with communication, the core of that is vocabulary. So this gives students a chance to build that core vocabulary that they need. Once again, these are available 24/7 in the platform, because we know that just like in a traditional classroom, students need to have access to content, right, at their disposal, what works for them. And so these are available 24/7. And again, these games really ensure some great variety. So I'm going to hand this back over to Misty. And, oh, no, I'm sorry. Let me just give you a little synopsis here. So just what we saw, our 4 pillars: learn, connect, practice, and play. Again, learn our instructor-led classes. These are synchronous, small groups, so no more than 10 learners at a time. Preparation materials are provided to the learners ahead of time. There's a schedule, and they do register. Connect are those conversation groups. These are also synchronous, real time, drop in and drop out though. No need to register. And then our practice, once again, those AI-powered role plays, they're asynchronous, so anytime, right, 24/7, and they can be completed individually or with a peer. And then we have those play learning games. These again are AI-powered, they're interactive games available 24/7. Okay, now I'm going to hand it over to Misty.
Thank you, Christina. Let me bring it up real quick. I'm going to bring up our app and I will show you what it looks like. So yeah, and I've seen in the chat asking about some of the tools that are available. So everyone has a backpack, and in their backpack includes a camera. They have a 3D pen. They have a little note paper that they can write notes on. And there's also an object scanner, which they can use in the environments to scan objects and learn the name of the different objects. But this is what this looks like here. And here you can see the schedule. So I've clicked on classes. I'm able to, that's where members can register for classes. Our events are those connect conversation groups where whenever one is available, they can just jump in at any time, and they're spread throughout the day. And then we have our practice themes, which I'm going to demo for you in a second, but I'll just show you real quick. Our play scene here is, like Christina was saying, a public forum. And this is really a place where you can meet other learners around the world and play 24/7. But let me walk you through our practice first. So I'm going to take us all. You'll see we've got 4 scenes right now, but October 4th, with our next app update, we will have 5 more scenes added and a lot more scenarios. And in each of these scenes that you choose, you'll have a list of different kinds of scenarios that you can work on, and they're labeled with different levels. And we find that our learners, they practice with any level. So it's really interesting. On our platform, they choose their own level. They don't have to stick within their own level, so they can choose classes that are higher level or lower level. So a lot of them, might be able to self-identify that that they're ready to take on a more challenging class with within a certain skill. So let's go ahead and check out our. I don't know, was that really loud for you? Is the volume okay? Is it okay? Okay. So here I am, and you've got one avatar over here, one avatar over here, and one here, and then one over here that I could speak with. I'm just going to go over here, and I'm on, of course, the desktop computer. And to Dex's questions, yes, all of these objects here, we can pick them up, we can manipulate them. I could chop them with the knife over there. I can pour drinks as well, and of course I can also, you know, throw items if I want to throw them at someone. So, so let's go over here. Let's go ahead and we'll talk with this person. This scenario practices asking others questions to learn more about them. So what you'll see here is that we have some tasks that our students are asked to complete. And as Christina was saying, that all of these scenarios connect with particular lessons, so they can work to either, you know, for preparation before a lesson, practice after a lesson, or maybe even just as a way to just self-assess whether they've achieved that learning goal. So this has asked me to introduce myself, so I'm just going to start off, and I'm going to use the voice chat. Hi, my name's Misty. What's your name? Mrs. D. It's good. I'm gonna leave that there. I could correct. I guess I could correct it. I see that it heard me. My pronunciation must not be good about this. My name. So it is ChatGPT powered. It takes a few seconds with the first response, and then the other ones are a little quicker.
Hey there, Misty. I'm Avery, the bartender here at the Deep Dive. Great to meet ya.
And then here I'm supposed to ask where they're from, so I'll go ahead and do that. Nice to meet you, Avery. Where are you from?
Nice to meet you too, Misty. I actually grew up a few hours north of here. How about you? Where are you from?
Right, where should we tell them we're from? See who?
Savannah.
Savannah.
Georgia. See if you know.
Okay. I'm from Savannah, Georgia. Have you ever been there?
Oh, Savannah, Georgia. That's a beautiful place. I haven't been there myself, but I've heard great things about it. How long have you been living here in the downtown district?
So one thing you'll see, like every time I can give it the same answer or same questions, and it'll give me a little bit different response each time. So I never know what it's going to say. But some cool features on here is that, you know, if there's a word that I don't understand, or I could click on it and I can see the synonym. I can see that word used in context. I could click on these icons and listen to it being said. Also, if there's a sentence that I want to keep in my notes, I just hold my my cursor over it, and then I can save it, or I can also see if it that sentence phrased in different ways to help me understand it. If I want to save it for later, I'll click my notes, and I'll just show you right here. Here are my class notes. So during class, the instructors might send different phrases, and so students can say whatever phrases they want to keep in their notes, so that they can refer to it later. I'll go ahead and finish out this and tell them it was nice to meet them. It was nice meeting you, Avery. Hope you have a good day. And then we'll send it off. And then since we have a little time, I'll show our backpack really quick.
It was great meeting you too, Misty. Thanks for stopping by. Have a fantastic day and feel free to swing by the Deep Dive anytime.
And now I've left. So I'll show just really quickly. Here is the backpack that I was mentioning, where we have a notepad, a 3D marker, our camera, our little object scanner, which we can use to scan objects, and find the word for them. Let me go ahead and then in our backpack, we also have like a little inventory, so I can place objects in our backpack. So we often use that during class, where you might ask them to collect some objects of something as an example of something that they would buy, and then they're going to talk with their group members about something that they did recently. So see, I'm just going to check were there any other comments, Christina or Trisha, as I've got it up. Anything from the comments that you think I need to show?
I was gonna say maybe just I I feel like someone was asking about kind of like the different notebooks and everything that students could use. So maybe even just showing the different tools that the teachers can bring in to customize the environment since students interact with those during lessons.
Absolutely. So I'm on our teacher, I'm using the teacher UI. So that's, I have access to a few more tools than what the students would see. But this one right here allows, if there's a quick word that I want my my student to see here, then I can put it above my head very quickly like that. And then I can just take that, keep it on as long as I'd like, or clear it. We also have, like you saw in that video of the lesson, we have whiteboards where we can place if we're wanting to have any text on there, and then we can write any of the text that we want them to see. We can also use a marker to highlight and all. And then also something that you might have noticed was how in that video they had numbers at the feet. And that was because those are some of the tools that we built in to help facilitate classes. And I think that this is one of the really, like, if you, I started with Second Life when I was in grad school in my first, computer assisted language learning class. And to actually have a tool now that was built for language teaching, like by language teachers, is really phenomenal. And it's so exciting to be able to use because there's been a lot of thought that's given to like, what do we need to have a successful classroom? And what kind of tools would help that facilitate that class. So I did show you the class notes that you can send, during class. We'll send instructions so that they can like refer back to whatever the instructions were for the activity. And then right here, this is our object list. And so when any objects that are in that scene, they'll be able to see. And when they scan a word, it'll like highlight for them so they can kind of keep track of the words that they're learning. And you can also click on it and be able to see the image of it. Let's see, any other questions that came through in terms of environment while we're here?
Maybe a quick look at just some of the potential other scenes, Misty, would be great.
Okay, I'll show you some of the other scenes that we have, and then we'll have some time for questions. So right here, you can see we have our 35 scenes. I'll kind of scroll through them a little bit. Love the airport departure. You can go all the way from scanning your passport and getting your ticket to going through security to the ticket agent onto the plane. We've got coffee shop where you can order coffee, and emergency scene, which is really great because it's really hard to have a class about emergencies in your class and to try to replicate that. So in this environment, you have a building on fire, you've got a robbery, and we're able to practice a lot of the language that you might use in those kind of situations. Our fast food restaurant, you can grill burgers, and there are a lot of interactables, but that's not what it's about. Like, we're not here just to grill burgers and make them, and that's a lot of fun. But what we're doing is we're incorporating this kind of object interaction into language learning. And so as they're doing these activities, they're using language. And even in that clip of just trying to sit down, what I love about that clip is they were using language the entire time. It wasn't a quiet moment. And even they had the same L1 of Japanese, they stayed in English. There's something about this environment, right, of just really feeling like you're immersed in, oh, I'm in an English speaking environment. I'm going to speak English. We've got our presentation stage, our resorts where they can go fishing and catch a fish, talk show, shopping center, our zoo, and then we partnered with Westin Hotel and have a branded hotel as well. Yeah, but with that, I think let me get back to my slide real quick. We do have, if anyone's interested in looking at our wall of love, you can use this QR code to scan it and just see some of the testimonials from the members. I think one thing that we hear a lot is that a lot of our members have used asynchronous apps before they came to Immerse. And so this was they're not coming out of like college Spanish and then taking this. These are adult learners. Our average age are like in their 40s, and they're from all walks of life. And they have had some success learning some basic vocabulary with asynchronous apps, but they've never had the opportunity to use the language. And so we offer, I'm not sure if we said, we offer English, French, and Spanish. And so this is their first opportunity too. And so the amount of growth that they're able to see in a short amount of time is pretty amazing. But I think that the second part of this is that community. And our members are really helpful and towards each other. So like that clip showed, and it's really amazing to see like really motivated learners that are there to support each other and to get as fluent as they can. But with that, I'll go ahead and open it up for any questions that we might have. And I don't know if Christine or Trisha, if you've noticed any questions that came in while I've been talking that you want to start with.
I was just typing a response back to Nan's question, so I'll go ahead and address it now. She was asking why every VR world she's ever seen doesn't have full avatars or higher end graphics. Is it financial or bandwidth or a decision? This is definitely a great question for our product team. I will say Misty, Christina, and I do not build the platform, but from what I've been told, it's generally like a bandwidth issue. And also there's been some research looking into, you know, does it actually benefit learners to have the full body versus just the top up? And what we found was no. So from my understanding, it was a bandwidth issue, and then it also doesn't really add anything, but Misty might know more about that too.
Yeah, I'll just say that if you look at the majority of any virtual worlds, there are no legs in the virtual world, and I think that just that has to do with you know, walking around and getting the legs to move with it. It adds everything in our scenes. Every object adds so much, right? And so we want them to be so rich with the objects that they're interacting with, and we're okay with losing legs so that we can have like the lemon that you can cut and some of those other fun and delightful interactive opportunities. But I will say, you very quickly forget that no one has legs. And I know when you're watching it, that's all you can see. But when you're looking at someone in this environment, especially when you're in the VR headset, you're not noticing that at all. Like, I don't even notice that no one has legs. So it's something that people who have not experienced it yet, that always stands out to them. But once you actually experience it, you'll see how quickly you realize that you're not on with legs.
Can I speak? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so first I want to say that it's really clear that you've got one heck of a set of best practices for any type of learning, especially with older students and for you know, language learning. And I like the fact that your interface includes all of the options. We had a meeting I think our last meeting in the virtual world MOOC. Kip was the presenter, was showing us some of his holograms that he would put together for people to have environments that they could use. But then he had to go, you know, they had to go out to Kitely, I think, to actually see the container of the course as a whole. So having it on the inside is a really big thing. On the other hand, I have to say, you know, I've been in virtual worlds for 14 years, and I haven't seen such a primitive environment since maybe 2012 or earlier. And I am very skeptical about this idea that you must be immersed and not have anything else happening except focusing on the learning environment as being a better way of doing things. So I'm really, really interested in seeing the comparative research on that. And I wonder, because I'm a research psychologist, if the difference for the different people that are in virtual worlds versus virtual realities where they're purpose made for the goggles, as opposed to being a virtual world that you can bring goggles in and interact with it. I feel that there are a lot of people that find those kinds of half-baked, and I mean, I understand if it's bandwidth, it's like, oh my God, never mind, because you've got a great learning interface there. But I can see people that are used to virtual worlds saying, why would I want to do that? Why do I want to be stuck? And a lot of the things that you're poking at, like community and being able to come back and explore interface with the environments and find ways to do artifacts that show that you're learning and all this kind of stuff. I have been with a number of students, from Doris Malero, our co-organizer, to Eugenia Calderon, who is a teacher who's been in virtual worlds since the beginning. I think the complexity of the areas that we're going to and talking about and able to explore later are also set up, and that's a question I was going to ask you, also set up that you can walk through them, and there are chat box to talk to, talk things that you can see, that you can build things yourself where you put in some of your information and you write something and leave it for the teacher. So virtually everything you're talking about as a very important aspect of VR is absolutely available in virtual worlds as well. And it may be the psychological comfort with different types of learning that will differentiate the kinds of people that will come to you and the people that will come to us. Just a thought. But it's wonderful. I think it's a really marvelous thing that you're doing.
Yeah, I'll share one thing that's interesting when you look at the object interaction that's available, and I think that the whole idea of being fully immersed, and of course, and that's what our users who are on desktop computers, they've got other things going on, right? And so they might not be as completely immersed, but still, what happens is you have this opportunity where other language is able to emerge that you didn't plan for. And so this is the virtual world, right? Affordances. And with the more features and the more interactive objects that we create, we're able to capitalize on these moments, right? So like in my classroom, if I'm doing ordering at a restaurant, I've got a pretty scripted amount of work, right? Like this is the script, we're kind of following it. Nothing's going to happen outside of that script. But when you're ordering in a restaurant in the virtual world and you've got that cup of coffee and you've spilt it, and now you've been like, oh, I'm so sorry. And someone's saying, oh, that was hot, that burned me. And the waitress is like, oh, I'm so sorry, let me clean that up. You now have this really rich environment for emergent language that doesn't happen in a real class. So I think that, and that's what we think about when we're thinking about these environments. We're not just adding objects in there to add them. It's not just like, let's cut up lemons. It's how can we provide this object interactivity in a way that we know will allow for those emergent language opportunities and make it feel real. Like you want to see, you expect to see some things in a restaurant, right? And so that's what we're thinking about when we're adding, the objects and thinking about the object interaction. And we do have some buildables where you can build a raft together on the deserted island where they work as a team, where you can build chairs in the garage and paint them. So there's some other kind of interactives like that are buildables as well.
I can see that being a positive for what you're doing, because things in Second Life like Learn It Town, you need to have a variety of teachers around who are usually volunteering their time to be the person behind the desk at the hotel or be the person in the cafe and so on. And I don't know if Dex's OWL is going to change that, but it's one of those things that you could see that being difficult to basically finance. If this is, like Eugenia Calderon and Doris too, they're using virtual worlds as a income stream because they're doing what they do best, which is teaching second languages. But if you were going to do a larger kind of a thing it would be really difficult, I think, for all of us to be able to script all that in and anticipate. And it's going to break down at some point as well. So maybe AI will change that. But very, very interesting, very interesting.
Thanks for your comments, Nan. Any other questions? Couple more minutes.
Yeah, I wanted to say something. Sorry, it's an avatar right now speaking for me. I think that you have to be there. There's lots of research. There has been a lot of research done comparing, complete immersion versus something like AR or Second Life, where that you're not in there. You're there, but you're not, and you're not. because you don't have your headset and so on, so that you're completely immersed. I think you have to try it to really understand, to really feel, to experience the difference. But you can also read the book by Jeremy. I mean, reading the book by Jeremy, I felt like I was actually in there with him as he described different experiences. It's called Experience on Demand. It's not that recent of a book, but he really gives you a sense of what it's like and how he describes the different experiences and different uses of VR, whether for, learning different professions like medicine or simulations. And he really outlined some research on how it really works. But there are some problems, of course, and that's, with the headsets like nausea, motion sickness, and other things that we sometimes forget. But it could be a huge part, where some people, as Nan mentioned, maybe they won't like it, but they might not be able to physically endure it. They might not be able to. So, I mean, right now, in the future, maybe when the headsets become a lot easier to manage, I think that'll come very soon.
Yeah, I mean, the changes that they've made just in the last few years are pretty amazing. So that's going to continue. And I will say the headset experience is so different than the desktop.
Exactly.
Really, like what you're seeing here, and it feels almost grainy, and it doesn't feel as impressive. Our marketing team is constantly like so frustrated, because when you're in the headset, you see it so different than when you see it on desktop. It's really no comparison. So it's hard. It is hard to communicate how like vivid it is in the headset. And I know Christina was for a long time, I had to really talk to her into joining Immerse, because at the start she's like, oh, I'm not sure if I really buy into this VR and all of that. But I think like if I won Christina over, I feel like, there's so many possibilities with this that we're just starting to explore. Did you want to add something to that, Christina?
No, but it is so true. And as you were sharing the experience, that classroom experience of language, and I think we have to always focus on our goal is to create a very safe place for learners to develop their language skills that they're going to use in the real world, right? And so placing them in this world really, really prepares them and helps them be more confident when they go out. So, whether it's cooking in a kitchen or a restaurant, or we have a doctor's scene too, that just really gives them that extra boost of confidence that maybe can't be given in a traditional classroom.
And I'll just end with, we had what's our takeaway today. So love for anyone to add into the chat, like what their one takeaway is from this session. We would love to hear that. And then finally, I'll share just a QR code here. If for our platform, we're partnering with some universities that are using Immerse as a supplemental digital tool for their learners. So if you're at all interested in learning more about that, I have a QR code here. You can give us your information, or I put on my email address if you would like. If you have any further questions, and I can share with Christina and Tricia as well, that we can answer afterwards. But thank you all for attending. We appreciate all of your participation. And yeah, excited to see more.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this eye-opener. And I envy you guys for being involved in this. I think it's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for having us.